What's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Welcome to a brand new episode of YONOSTALGIA, the show that covers everything you grew up with, from toys and fads, trends, movies, TV, you name it. If it's part of the everyday fabric of our lives, it will get covered right here on YONOSTALGIA. Of course, new episodes of YONOSTALGIA are released every other Tuesday on your favorite podcast apps and players of choice, as well as YouTube under Leigh Dickey TV, and my official website, leightdickey.com. So please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars and leave us reviews on your favorite podcast apps and players of choice. If you want to get in touch with the show and suggest topics and anything you want covered, please do send an email to yonostalgiashow@gmail.com or follow along on social media at YONOSTALGIASHOW to keep up with me on this time traveling trip. Today I want to discuss and share with you how the Power Rangers got me into martial arts. So without further ado, let's get into that episode right now. Alright, so yes, how the Power Rangers got me into martial arts. Now first let me say this, I am a big fan of sports. When it comes to just anything sports related, I love this stuff. Baseball, football, the sport of professional wrestling, bowling. If it's a sport and if it's competitive, it will probably sort of entrance my eyeballs. And if it's available on TV and I'm flipping channels, or I know where to look and what to look for, I know what I like, and I just like sports. And that's just, if I find it and I can find interest in it, I will probably watch it. So that's, just me in a nutshell when it comes to, like, some of my viewing habits. But how the Power Rangers got me into martial arts. I've always been a fan of martial arts. Like, I love martial arts cinema. I've seen, like, Enter the Dragon. Anything, like, the martial arts-centric sort of B-movies. So, like, Blood Fist with Don Wilson. I think they did, like, 8 films of those. Best of the Best with Eric Roberts and its many sequels, produced and directed by Philip Ree. Just, that's my bag. If you want to know, like, in terms of, like, the martial arts side of things, that's me. So, like, these campy B movies, if you want to call them that, like these B martial arts films, that's me. The campy action films, that's me. Although I have been known to enjoy a Hallmark rom-com, if you will. And even like the big budget rom-coms, I will watch. If you want to know more about me in a nutshell, it's like martial arts action films, cheesy rom-com movies. Why not? I'm a big soft teddy bear, okay? Even though I'm here telling you how the Power Rangers kind of got me into martial arts. So, how that happened was, I'm not even sure how I first came across the Power Rangers. I really have no recollection of it. But I was of peak age, like I was right in that age range where, like, obviously it is a kid-centered show. It is targeted towards children, right? And when it first hit the air, I was about 4.5 years old. I'm in that target age range. And I think the thing that sort of at first drew me to the show was the fact, like, colorful suits and just, I don't know whether it was the athleticism, but I'm pretty sure it was like the crazy explosions and the colorful suits. And the fact that, like, I'd never seen anything like that before. Like, my little brain was going, hey, what's this? This is cool. And, back when I was growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, like, you just, in the 80s and 90s, I'm not saying that, like, discipline was a problem, but, like, how kids were raised back then, it was just sort of like, sit here, watch TV, and, don't make too much noise, don't make a mess. Okay, yeah. And obviously I'm flipping channels, and I came across the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the original series. And to be quite honest with you, I was hooked from, like, the first time I saw it. I think I was more of a fan of, the most, like most people, I'm a giant fan of Jason David Frank when it comes to that show. He played Tommy Oliver. He was the original Green Ranger, the White Ranger. He went on to star in both Zeo and Turbo as the Red Ranger, and then I think he came back in 2004 for Power Rangers Dino Thunder, where he donned another color again as the Black Ranger. But then again, he was, like many other kids, he was a favorite of mine. But again, like, it was colorful suits, pretty colors, and just, I'd always wanted to, for some reason, I was drawn to that, but then again, like, I am a fan of martial arts in general, like the cinema or just seeing it competitively on TV. I mean, I took karate lessons for like 10 years. I taught self-defense for a little while when I was in high school, and I just wanted to do that, right? So it got me into martial arts because you just see all the moves that they do, the roundhouse kicks, all the handwork, and the quick hands and things like that. And then you have like tournaments and what have you, and I wanted to do that. But the thing is, I'm not an athlete, okay? I've mentioned this on my other show, the Beats and Speaks podcast, several times, and on my YouTube channel, Leigh Dickey TV. I am disabled. I have cerebral palsy, so my mobility and my flexibility they're not what they should be, right? And I mean, that's not a mark against me. That's just a bag of hammers that I got that I'm making the best of. I'm not saying that so you guys I don't want you guys to feel bad for me, because just don't. I am a guy that will work my ass off for everything I get, and that's just how it is. But this is just a window into getting into martial arts and things like that, right? So my parents found a karate school that isn't that far from where I live, and at the time it wasn't that far from where I lived. So they enrolled me, I took classes, and I was having a good time with it. Like, I moved up the ranks a little bit, and I learned these things called katas, they're a series of moves strung together. I always enjoyed doing that. I really enjoyed getting to spar, right? So obviously you'd buy the equipment, which was like a headpiece, gloves, and because I couldn't really kick and pick my leg up, even though they gave you, or like part of the set was you would buy like feet guards or protection for your feet, so you could actually, throw a roundhouse kick. I couldn't, because I really can't lift my legs up that high. So they allowed, and this was one of those things, they actually allowed me to wear sort of athletic shoes, whether they were like regular everyday like running shoes, because they had to adapt things for me so I could physically do what they asked. But, part of me, I was inspired by the Power Rangers to get into martial arts, and for 10 years I took lessons, and I had fun doing it. Just, I scratched that itch and moved on. After about 10 years, I was just like, I'm not into this anymore, and we're going to move on to something else. But like I said, it was more, the colors of their suits and the fact that they could physically do those things. Like, I just wanted to be able to sort of take care of myself if I had ever gotten into any sort of situation, right? And I can, I'm not touting that, but I can physically handle myself. I don't ever, condone using it to get into physical altercations, but if you have to defend yourself, you got to defend yourself, right? And I've had a few, run-ins here and there with certain people in my youth and my younger years. But it got me into just, like, I wanted to go full bore. And one of the cool things that I remember seeing is that I had mentioned Jason David Frank earlier. So the school that I went to for karate, after I'd gotten there, I think probably a couple of years after I started taking lessons, or maybe even a year later, they had, I don't know whether they purchased this poster or somebody found it, but in the right off the entranceway, you get into like that main hallway into the building that they were in, and there's this poster of Jason David Frank, who was, like I said, the original Green Ranger, and he's pretty much entrenched in the kids of the 90s as the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, and like probably the Red Ranger, and for the younger generation, I mean, who were born after like around the early 2000s and 2004 and beyond, probably the Black Dino Thunder Ranger. But still, there was this poster of Jason David Frank with two kids. I don't know whether they were students or this was just a photo op where he was in his gi, because that's the name of the outfit or the uniform that you wear. With I'm not sure again if these were kids, like just students of his, or a photo op. But he's in his uniform, his gi, and obviously all smiles because they're little kids in this poster. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, that's cool. They have that here. And I just, wanted to learn as much as I could and physically try and figure out how I could use this stuff, or like use what I was learning. And I was just hooked, right? Like the Power Rangers got me into it. I was a fan of martial arts cinema. Like I'd seen The Crow in my early life. What I'm doing watching a film like The Crow when I'm probably like 6 or 7 years old, I don't know, but I enjoyed it. And there's a lot, obviously I'm a fan of as I keep saying, I'm a fan of martial arts and martial arts films like Mr. Nice Guy, Rumble in the Bronx, the early North American Jackie Chan films, Legend of the Drunken Master, which is, I think, Drunken Master 2 in China, but you get the idea. And I was just entrenched. Mainly, I think it was like just the big explosions, the color of their suits, the things that they would get into. Because, I mean, as a kid, I kept thinking, like, that, after a while, I think my parents smartened me up. But at first, I was like, oh, that's the kind of life that I want, right? Where, like, you get into high school, you meet the pretty girl, and I'm not saying that you're going to, have run-ins with people, and you're going to get into all this, like, random action fighting scenes. But I was like, okay, you know what? I just want to be able to handle myself if that ever happens. And I was able to, and I still am able to. And it's cool. It was just one of those things that inspired me. Granted, over the years, I have rewatched the show on Netflix, because that's where it is now. And to be quite honest with you, part of me, as much as I loved the show as a kid, and I look back on it fondly, because that was part of my childhood, obviously. But rewatching it through the eyes of an adult, there is a large part of me that is just, I can't believe I used to watch this regularly on Saturday mornings or the afternoons after school. I couldn't believe it, I mean, granted, if it's on and I just want to like go down memory lane, if I find it, like I have tapes of it out in the other room, upstairs on my main floor. I've got the original movie. I don't have the Turbo movie, and quite frankly, I've seen the Turbo movie. Not a fan of it, to be honest with you. I wasn't a fan of the Power Rangers Turbo series. I think that's my least favorite in the entire franchise run, to be quite honest with you. But I don't know, that it was one of those series and it was a perfect time in the 90s to grow up. I was a kid, I was in that peak age range, and I was just happy. Like anything Power Rangers I had toy dragon dagger. I think I've still got that around here somewhere. I've got a Green Ranger sort of stuffed plushie, which is upstairs in my room. I've got a few others. I think I've got like a Blue Ranger stuffed plush, and then I've got a Red Ranger stuffed plush, because those were pretty big back in those days. And funny story about that Green Ranger stuffed plush that I told you about just a few seconds ago. I remember, well, at least the way my parents told it to me and the way that my mother still tells it to me is that we were shopping somewhere. I think I was looking for it, or we were just in a toy store somewhere. It might have been a Toys R Us. I can't remember. It might have been a Zellers. But I found that one that I still have all these years later, and it was the last one on the shelf. I pulled it off, we bought it, and I guess, like, it's just one of those things that I will forever cherish, you know, because it's a piece of my childhood. I am probably never going to get rid of that thing. And that'll tell you how much of a fan that there was. Like, if it had the words Power Rangers on it, it has probably ended up in my hands. Okay? Like, it's probably in my house somewhere. There's a ton of stuff that is Power Ranger related that is in my house. And to be quite honest with you, it's cool that they got me into martial arts. I'm forever grateful for being inspired by them and like various other forms of like film and TV to get into martial arts, because for a long time, that's what I did. That's how I spent my nights after school. That's how I spent my weekends. And I'm thankful for it, you know? I'm thankful that I was taught, you know, it like honed in on discipline. It honed in on character. And I pretty much matured there and grew up at that school a little bit. You know, from the age of like 7 to the age of 17, that was my life. And I have nothing but cool, awesome, fun, great memories of it. You know, like it was a fun time. Yes, there are some things that I can't do. Like, as I said, I can't lift my leg up all that high, and kicking is almost non-existent. But I got decent hands. That's all I'm gonna say. You know what I mean? And to the people that taught me, thank you. To the fellow students that I had and the friends that I made back in those days, thank you all very much. And I'm thankful for the time I got to spend at that school. I'm thankful that I was inspired to get involved in like some form of physical activity that wasn't the norm. Like, I don't think it was all that normal to get back into martial arts back then, you know? So, like, because most kids my age were either skating, playing hockey, or like any other form of like sports, say like basketball. Football wasn't big because this is Canada, and like I don't think they had pee-wee football programs back then, or if they did, they weren't widely known. But you get the idea. It was like baseball, basketball, soccer, but martial arts wasn't all that big, at least like in the circle that my parents kept and in the circle that I kept. So, I mean, I'm thankful that I was inspired to just get into it and get into some form of physical activity, and, you know, to get the opportunity to learn something, and to learn something that I still look back at fondly, whether it's, you know, the Power Rangers themselves, because I look back on that time of my life as a kid when you had nothing to worry about, and I think of that show and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I liked it. I can't believe I used to like it, and it still brings back fond memories. And I'm going to be completely honest, a lot of people my age, Kelly Kapowski was your first crush. No, ladies and gentlemen, Kimberly Hart, Amy Jo Johnson. Amy Jo Johnson was my first crush. I'll tell you that right now, okay? And I'll admit that on camera and on Yo Nostalgia on the podcast if you're listening, whether it's on my website or your favorite podcast app and player of choice. But that's the story of how the Power Rangers and martial arts cinema sort of inspired me to, you know, pursue karate and martial arts and self-defense and that sort of thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, this episode of Yo Nostalgia. Thank you all again for tuning in and listening, watching, depending on where you're seeing and or viewing this from, whether it's on my official website, LeighTDickey.com, YouTube under Leigh Dickey TV, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever your podcasts are available. Of course, new episodes of Yo Nostalgia are released every other Tuesday. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars. Leave us reviews if you want to suggest topics or just comments, questions. Email them to yonostalgiashow@gmail.com. Follow along on social media at YONOSTALGIASHOW. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks for a new episode of Yo Nostalgia. I'm Leigh Dickey, and I'm signing off. Peace!